Thank you, Senator Enzi. I'm going to recognize Senator Bennet. Senator Bennet won. Senator Bennet, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and the ranking member for all the work that both of you have done, and just express my hope that at some point we're going to be able to come together on a bipartisan effort to actually fix this legislation. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, or maybe the ranking member said this, we're 6 years overdue in terms of a reauthorization here. And I just want to talk for a second about why I think this is so important, to find a way to bridge this so-called philosophical difference here, because I share a lot of the views of the ranking member on the question of compliance. You know, having been a school superintendent, I've seen how much time and effort is put into compliance with rules from the federal government that by the time they make it to a school and a classroom really don't make sense to the people that are in that school and classroom, importantly the teacher, most importantly the child that's in the classroom. So then one asks the question, well, why are we here having this conversation about what the federal role is? And I think the reason we're having that conversation is that this country has essentially made no progress on outcomes for children since A Nation at Risk was written. We've doubled the amount of money we're spending in our classrooms since the 1970s in real dollars, and we've seen no change in outcomes. 9 out of 100 poor children in this country can have a reasonable expectation that they're going to graduate from college. You think about what that looks like. We have 100 chairs in the United States Senate, 100 desks, or 100 senators. And if we were children living in poverty, only 9 of those desks would be filled by people that had a college degree. When George Bush, the son, became president of the United States, we led the world in the production of college graduates. Today, we're 16th in the world. And we can't even reauthorize this act. Why? What is the federal role? I think the federal role is to represent children that are marooned in cities in this country and in rural areas in this country that have no school anywhere close to them that could provide them with a realistic opportunity out of that neighborhood or out of an unemployment line. For the children that are in the 91 of 100 today that have no reasonable expectation of ever getting a college degree or the equivalent of a college degree, somebody needs to raise the alarm. For them, this is a civil rights issue, and this is a question about whether or not they're going to be able to participate in this democracy or in this economy in a meaningful way. And for the rest of us, it's going to mean the difference between recognizing our democracy and recognizing this economy in the middle of the 21st century. If you extrapolate the academic outcomes that we have for children in the United States against the changing demographics in this country and assume that we're never going to change the delivery system of K-12 education, we will not recognize ourselves as the United States of America. And that's the conversation I think we should be having here. I don't think we should be telling people at the local level how to deliver K-12 education. But I think we should be telling people all across the country that we expect a set of outcomes that's different than the ones that we're seeing today in our schools. And that's why it's important for us to reauthorize this legislation. It's important for us to work together as Democrats and Republicans to do it. But I think we need to get focused on what it is we're actually trying to solve here, which is to create opportunity for children that today in this country don't have any. And I look forward to working with people in both parties to try to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Bennet. Senator Bennet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say to my friend from North Carolina that the chairman's bill actually does make a huge change in No Child Left Behind, because right now it applies to 100% of schools. And what the chairman's mark says is this will no longer apply to 95% of schools for all the reasons that you said, which is that these decisions are made, many of them, much better at the local level than they are here. But the mark says, you know, with respect to the very bottom 5% of schools in this country, we expect people to make changes for the benefit of the children that are there. As I said earlier, I'd much rather have those decisions made by people at the local level than people in the United States Congress who I think actually have very little understanding of what's actually going on in our schools and our classrooms. But to say that this isn't a huge change, in fact, to argue that somehow it's doubling down on No Child Left Behind, I don't think is a fair characterization of where we are. If we had a rally today in the Capitol, in this nation's capital, to keep No Child Left Behind the same as it is, there's not a single person that would come to that. So I think there is a real opportunity for us to find a way to work on a bipartisan basis to try to change this law so that it allows us to, as a country, to have a set of expectations that says the fact that you're born into poverty shouldn't mean that you're consigned to a horrible school, and at the same time says that we believe that the people that are actually going to deliver this education are our teachers, and the people that are going to consume it are our kids, and that they're in a better position to figure out how to do that than we are.
Could I ask the Senator a question?
Sure.
Would I be incorrect to believe that the data reporting did not apply to 100% of the schools, or that annually all school systems will be required under the accountability provisions to designate the 15%, which would make up the 10% with the largest gaps and the 5% for the lowest performance? Does that not apply to all schools?
Yeah, I think it does apply to all schools. But I think that, and I am, believe me, of all the people sitting around this table, as sensitive as anybody to the idea that we don't want to have more data requests than are absolutely necessary to understand what's actually going on in the systems. But I think just as the ranking member has said that the Secretary should publish a consumer report, in effect, on schools, for him to be able to do that, he's going to need the data that is called for in this bill. Are there places where we ask for too much? I'm sure there are. It's one of the reasons why Senator Alexander and I are working on a project to try to see which regulations really are required by the federal law and which are just have been laid on top of everything else. Again, I think there's important work for us to do together here, but I think the idea that somehow the federal government has no role here is a mistake. And that doesn't even have to do with the money part of this. It has to do with the fact that we are the United States of America, and a kid born in Chicago is a Chicago kid and an Illinois kid, but they're also an American kid, and we need to care about the outcome for that kid.